What if everything you've been taught about manifesting money has been keeping you stuck in the very cycle of lack you're trying to escape? Right now, as you're watching this, you might be carrying the weight of financial stress on your shoulders, checking your bank account with that familiar knot in your stomach, or lying awake at night wondering when things will finally shift in your favor. Has this ever happened to you? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. You've tried the affirmations, followed the visualization techniques, maybe even attempted those complicated 30-day manifestation challenges, yet here you are, still waiting for your breakthrough. Take a breath with me for a moment. Not the shallow, anxious kind you've been taking while scrolling through your phone looking for answers, but a real one. The kind that reminds your nervous system that you're safe, that you can stop bracing yourself against life, even if just for the next few minutes. Because what you're about to discover might surprise you. This isn't going to be another video telling you to work harder, think more positively, or wait patiently for the universe to deliver your desires. You didn't stumble upon this content by accident. Think about it. Out of millions of videos on this platform, something guided you here. That restless part of you that's tired of being told you're not enough until some external proof shows up. The part that's exhausted from pushing and forcing and trying to convince the universe that you're worthy of abundance. That part of you knew exactly what it was looking for. Florence Scovel Shinn understood something that most people miss entirely. Wealth isn't something you chase, convince, or even attract through sheer force of will. It's something you remember, something you already are beneath all the stories you've been telling yourself about limitation and scarcity. Stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to share with you completely flips the traditional manifestation script on its head. For too long, you've been operating from the belief that you need to prove yourself worthy of financial abundance, that you must somehow earn the right to live without money stress, or that wealth is reserved for other people, the lucky ones, the chosen ones, the ones who somehow cracked a code you're still searching for. But what if the very act of searching, of trying so hard to manifest money, has been the block itself? What if I told you that massive sums of money could flow into your life in 3 days or less, not through complicated rituals or exhausting mental gymnastics, but through a simple shift so profound yet so natural that you'll wonder why no one ever explained it this way before? What if the wealth you're seeking is already yours, waiting not for you to become someone different, but for you to remember who you really are? This isn't about positive thinking or vision boards or any of the surface-level techniques that might give you temporary hope, but leave you feeling more frustrated than before. This is about accessing a frequency of abundance that exists beneath all your current circumstances. A state of being that magnetizes money, not because you're trying harder, but because you finally stopped trying at all. The transformation we're about to explore together will challenge everything you think you know about manifestation, and by the time we're finished, you'll realize that the very journey you've been on, all the searching and striving, has been preparing you for this moment of recognition. If you're drawn to this kind of transformational content that creates real shifts rather than temporary inspiration, consider subscribing. This channel is for people ready to do the inner work that creates lasting change. Here's the hidden truth that most people never discover. The act of chasing wealth is precisely what keeps it at arm's length. Every time you reach for money from a place of need, every moment you spend convincing yourself that abundance is coming someday, you're actually reinforcing the very story that's been blocking you all along. Florence Scovel Shinn understood this paradox deeply. She revealed that we must completely cease the pattern of needing, doubting, and recycling the same tired narrative of lack if we want to access what's already ours. Think about it for a moment. When you're desperately trying to manifest money, what energy are you actually broadcasting? You're sending out the signal that you don't have it, that you're separate from it, that it's something external you must somehow capture or convince to come your way. But what if that entire framework has been the problem from the very beginning? The profound shift happens when you stop chasing entirely and start being. Not being positive, not being hopeful, but being the person who already has what you're seeking. This isn't about pretending or fake it till you make it mentality. This is about recognizing a fundamental truth that Florence Scovel Shinn spent her life teaching. You don't become wealthy one day after you've somehow earned it or proven yourself worthy. You already are that which you seek. Let that sink in for a moment. You already are that which you seek. This isn't motivational fluff or spiritual bypassing. This is the Yao foundation of how manifestation actually works behind the scenes. The wealth, the abundance, the financial freedom you've been pursuing isn't something you need to create or attract. It's something you need to remember, something you need to stop pushing away with your very efforts to obtain it. Most people spend their entire lives in this exhausting cycle of reaching, grasping, and waiting for external validation that they're finally enough to receive what they desire. But the real transformation begins the moment you realize that your worthiness was never in question, that your capacity for abundance was never conditional, and that the only thing standing between you and the money you want is the story you keep telling yourself about why you don't have it yet. The impact of this revelation goes far deeper than just your bank account. It touches every decision you make, every breath you take, every way you move through the world. When you truly understand that you are already that which you seek, your entire relationship with money shifts from one of desperation to one of natural expectation. Now, I want to go even deeper into this transformation because there's a specific process that Florence Scovel Shinn discovered for making this shift real in your actual lived experience. Not just as a beautiful concept, but as a tangible change that shows up in your physical reality within days. Write in the comments, "I already am," if this is resonating with something you've always known deep down. The process I'm about to share with you reveals something that completely contradicts what most manifestation teachers will tell you. They'll say you need to feel abundant to attract money, but they miss the crucial element that makes the difference between temporary inspiration and lasting transformation. The real secret lies in understanding that wealth doesn't flow to you after you finally feel safe and secure. It flows because you feel safe first. This is the hidden paradox that Florence Scovel Shinn discovered through years of working with people who seemed to do everything right, yet remained stuck in financial struggle. Your nervous system holds the key to everything. When you're operating from a state of chronic stress, always scanning for threats, always bracing for the next financial blow, your body is literally broadcasting a frequency of survival. And survival mode and abundance cannot coexist in the same nervous system. Think about the last time you checked your bank balance when money was tight. Notice what happened in your body, the tension in your shoulders, the quickening of your pulse, that familiar knot in your stomach. Your nervous system interpreted that moment as danger, sending signals throughout your entire being that resources are scarce and you need to prepare for scarcity. Every cell in your body received that message and began operating from that reality. But here's where the real transformation begins. When you make the decision to feel safe first, before any external evidence supports that safety, something profound shifts behind the scenes. Your nervous system begins to relax, your breathing deepens, and suddenly you're no longer operating from the frequency of lack. You're embodying the energy of someone who is already supported, already cared for, already abundant. This isn't about positive thinking or trying to convince yourself that everything is fine when it clearly isn't. This is about recognizing that your current financial circumstances are simply a reflection of the nervous system state you've been living in, and that by shifting that internal state, you begin to magnetize different external results. The difference between hoping for money and embodying wealth is like the difference between knocking on a door and actually living in the house. When you hope, you're still operating from the outside, still asking permission, still waiting for someone or something else to grant you access to what you want. But when you embody, you're breathing as someone who already belongs, who already has access, who already knows their worth isn't up for debate. Florence Scovel Shinn taught that we must become the frequency of what we seek, rather than remaining in the frequency of seeking it. Every time you catch yourself hoping that money will come, asking the universe to please send you what you need, or trying to convince yourself that abundance is on its way, you're actually reinforcing your position as someone on the outside looking in. The moment you begin breathing as someone already supported, moving as someone who expects to be taken care of, speaking as someone who knows they belong in abundance, your entire energy signature changes. You're no longer broadcasting need, you're radiating fulfillment, and the universe responds to what you're being, not what you're wanting. If this approach to abundance feels different from what you've heard before, a like helps. This message finds others who are ready for this same recognition. It supports content that prioritizes depth over quick fixes. Now, I want to reveal the specific technique that makes this embodiment real and tangible, the exact process that allows you to shift from hoping to knowing in a matter of days rather than years. Write in the comments, "I choose safety first," if you're ready to make this shift in your own nervous system. The technique itself is beautifully simple, yet profoundly powerful in its impact. There are 3 words that will become your new operating system. 3 words that Florence Scovel Shinn understood could reprogram your entire relationship with abundance. But before I share them with you, I need you to understand that this isn't about repeating empty phrases or trying to convince yourself of something that feels untrue. This is about connecting with a deeper truth that already exists within you. The words are, I trust, I allow, I receive. Say them with me now, slowly, letting each word settle into your body rather than just passing through your mind. I trust, I allow, I receive. Notice what happens when you speak these words, not as a desperate mantra, not as something you're trying to make true, but as a message from the part of you that has always known this truth. When you say, I trust, you're not trying to manufacture trust where none exists. You're acknowledging the trust that already lives beneath your fear, the knowing that has guided you through every challenge you've ever faced. When you say, I allow, you're releasing the grip of control that has been exhausting you, opening your hands to receive what's already flowing toward you. And when you say, I receive, you're declaring your readiness to accept the abundance that is your natural state. This declaration becomes more than words when you understand the profound impact of speaking your truth into existence. There's something that happens behind the scenes when you give voice to your deepest knowing, when you take what lives in the quiet chambers of your heart and bring it into the physical world through sound, through vibration, through the courage to declare who you really are. The transformation deepens when you make this declaration not just in private, but in a way that anchors it into reality. There's a reason why Florence Scovel Shinn encouraged people to speak their truth openly, to plant their intentions not just in the invisible realm of thought, but in the tangible world of action and commitment. When you write these words down, when you put them somewhere others can see, you're making a decision that goes far beyond positive thinking. You're telling the universe that you're serious about this shift, that you're ready to step out of the shadows of doubt and into the light of your own knowing. The act of writing, I trust, I allow, I receive, isn't about seeking attention or validation from others. It's about validating yourself, about making a public declaration that you're no longer hiding from your own abundance. Every time someone else reads those words, they're witnessing your commitment to transformation, and that witnessing creates an energetic anchor that makes your new reality more solid, more real, more inevitable. You're not just thinking differently, You're acting differently, choosing differently, declaring yourself differently. Now, I want to reveal exactly how this declaration becomes the foundation for the 3-day process that can completely revolutionize your financial reality, starting with the most crucial element that most people completely overlook. Write in the comments, "I trust, I allow, I receive," if you're ready to make this your new truth. The most crucial element that people overlook is understanding what to do when your mind inevitably drifts back to old patterns of thinking. Because here's what will happen. You'll declare, "I trust, I allow, I receive." You'll feel that surge of clarity and connection, and then within hours or maybe minutes, that familiar voice of doubt will start whispering again. This is not failure. This is the natural process of transformation, and how you handle these moments determines whether your shift becomes permanent or just another temporary high. When fear creeps back in, when doubt starts questioning whether this could really work for you, when your mind begins recycling those old stories about why you're different or why abundance doesn't work for people like you, the key is returning to stillness without judgment. Not fighting the doubt, not trying to convince yourself it's wrong, but gently redirecting your attention back to the truth you've already declared. This gentle redirection is like training a puppy. You don't scold the puppy for wandering off. You simply guide it back to where you want it to be again and again until it naturally starts going there on its own. Every time you catch your mind drifting toward scarcity and gently bring it back to abundance, you're literally rewiring your neural pathways to default to wealth consciousness instead of lack consciousness. The real transformation begins with day 1 of this 3-day process, and what I'm about to share with you will seem almost too simple to be powerful. But Florence Scovel Shinn understood that the most profound shifts often come through the simplest practices, because simplicity allows you to focus on what truly matters rather than getting lost in complicated techniques. Day 1 requires only one thing from you, and it happens in those precious moments right before you fall asleep. You don't need a perfect routine. You don't need to memorize any scripts. You don't need to set up elaborate visualization sessions. All you need is to fall asleep feeling as if your financial desire has already happened. Think about what happens in that liminal space between waking and sleeping. Your conscious mind, with all its doubts and logical arguments, begins to step aside. Your analytical brain that loves to question and resist and make everything complicated starts to quiet down. And in that softened state, your subconscious mind becomes incredibly receptive to new programming. This is the hidden gateway that most people rush through without recognizing its power. Instead of falling asleep worried about bills, replaying conversations about money, or mentally rehearsing worst-case scenarios, you're going to do something radically different. You're going to drift off feeling complete, feeling fulfilled, feeling like someone who has already received what they've been seeking. Now, I want to reveal the specific technique that makes this more than just wishful thinking. The exact approach that transforms this simple practice into a powerful tool for rewiring your entire relationship with abundance. Write in the comments, "I'm ready for day 1," if you're prepared to begin this journey tonight. The technique works because it harnesses what Florence Scovel Shinn recognized as the most powerful window for transformation that exists in your daily experience. That liminal moment between consciousness and sleep isn't just a transition. It's a gateway where the ordinary rules of logic and limitation temporarily dissolve, allowing your deeper self to become incredibly receptive to new possibilities. Think about what typically happens during those final moments before you drift off. Your mind replays the day's stresses, cycles through tomorrow's worries, or gets caught in that familiar loop of financial anxiety. But here's what most people don't realize. Those final thoughts become the instructions your subconscious mind receives to work with throughout the entire night. Whatever emotional state you fall asleep in becomes the blueprint your deeper mind uses to create more of the same. For those who felt something click during this conversation, subscribing means you'll access new insights that build on what we've explored. Think of it as joining people who understand transformation happens from the inside out. This is where the real magic behind Florence Scovel-Shinn's teachings becomes clear. She understood that the subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between what's happening in your external reality and what's happening in your internal experience. When you fall asleep feeling worried about money, your subconscious receives that as instructions to create more situations that will make you worry about money. But when you fall asleep feeling abundant, feeling like someone who has already received, your subconscious gets entirely different instructions. Tonight, instead of allowing your mind to drift toward lack, instead of mentally rehearsing all the reasons why money feels scarce or difficult, you're going to deliberately shift your final thoughts toward abundance. Not as a desperate attempt to convince yourself of something that feels untrue, but as a conscious decision to feed your subconscious mind the energy of wealth rather than the energy of worry. Picture this transformation. Instead of falling asleep calculating bills or wondering how you'll make it through the month, you drift off feeling grateful for money that's flowing to you, feeling peaceful about your financial future, feeling like someone who naturally expects to be supported and cared for. Your nervous system relaxes into a state of abundance rather than tightening into a state of survival. Throughout the night, while your conscious mind rests, your subconscious mind works with these final impressions, weaving them into your energy field, integrating them into your nervous system, and beginning to attract experiences that match this new frequency. You're literally programming yourself for abundance while you sleep, using the natural cycles of consciousness to do the heavy lifting of transformation. Now, I want to share the exact visualization technique that makes this process even more powerful, the specific approach that helps you create such a vivid inner experience of receiving money that your subconscious mind accepts it as real. Write in the comments, "Abundance is my final thought," if you're ready to transform your sleep into a manifestation tool. The visualization technique is refreshingly simple, yet incredibly powerful when you understand the hidden mechanics behind why it works. As you're lying there in bed, your body settling into the sheets, your breathing naturally deepening, you're going to let a simple scene come to mind. Not something elaborate or complicated, but something beautifully ordinary. Perhaps you're checking your bank account and finding yourself smiling at the number you see, or maybe you're receiving an unexpected payment that changes everything, or discovering some wonderful financial news that fills you with quiet joy. The key insight that most people miss is that you don't need to force any details. You don't need to know exactly how much money or precisely where it's coming from, or the specific mechanism that brings it to you. Florence Scovel-Shinn understood that when we try to micromanage the universe, when we get caught up in orchestrating every detail of how our abundance should arrive, we actually create resistance rather than flow. Instead, let the scene show up naturally, the way a pleasant memory might drift into your awareness. Maybe it's opening an email with surprising good news, or receiving a call that changes your financial situation, or simply feeling that profound sense of relief that comes when money flows easily into your life. Trust whatever image wants to appear, because your deeper wisdom knows exactly what scene will be most meaningful and believable for your particular nervous system. But here's where the real transformation happens, and this is the part that separates effective visualization from mere wishful thinking. You don't want to watch this scene like you're viewing a movie about someone else's life. You want to step directly into it as the person it's happening to. Feel yourself in that moment, inhabiting your body as you receive this financial blessing, experiencing it from the inside rather than observing it from the outside. Notice what happens in your chest when you truly step into this scene. Does your breathing naturally deepen? Do your shoulders soften? Do you feel that subtle sense of safety and relaxation that comes when your nervous system recognizes that you're supported? This embodied feeling, this physical sensation of relief and gratitude and peace is what your subconscious mind actually responds to. Your subconscious doesn't think in words or images. It responds to energy, to feeling states, to the vibrational signature you're broadcasting. When you can genuinely feel what it's like to receive money, when you can access that state of gratitude and relief and safety that comes with financial abundance, you're giving your subconscious mind clear instructions about the reality you want to create. Now, I want to reveal what happens when your mind inevitably wanders during this process, and the gentle technique that transforms even distraction into a tool for deeper manifestation. Write in the comments, "I step into abundance," if you can already feel what it would be like to receive that financial breakthrough. The gentle technique I'm about to share transforms what most people see as failure into the very mechanism of success. Because here's what will inevitably happen as you're lying there, cultivating this feeling of financial abundance. Your mind will wander. You'll be deep in the scene of receiving money, feeling that beautiful sense of relief and gratitude. And suddenly you'll find yourself thinking about tomorrow's meeting or that conversation you had earlier, or wondering if you remembered to lock the front door. Most people interpret this mind wandering as evidence that they're doing something wrong, that they're not focused enough, that maybe they're just not cut out for this kind of inner work. But Florence Scovel Shinn understood something profound about the nature of transformation. The wandering mind isn't your enemy, it's your training partner. Every time you notice your attention has drifted and gently guide it back to the feeling of abundance, you're literally strengthening your ability to choose your focus. This gentle persistence, this loving redirection of attention is what trains your consciousness to default to abundance rather than scarcity. You don't fight the wandering thoughts or judge yourself for having them. You simply notice, "Oh, my mind drifted," and then softly return to the scene, return to the feeling, return to the version of yourself who has already received what you're seeking. Think of it like developing a muscle. Each time you return your attention to abundance, you're building your capacity to hold that frequency for longer periods. The wandering isn't interrupting your practice. It's providing the resistance that makes your practice stronger. Behind the scenes, you're rewiring decades of conditioning that taught your mind to worry about money, to expect struggle, to prepare for scarcity. This is where Florence Scovel Shinn's most powerful teaching comes alive in your actual experience. She discovered that assumptions, even when they feel completely false in the beginning, will harden into fact if you persist in them with gentle consistency. You're not trying to convince yourself that you have money when your bank account says otherwise. You're not attempting to override reality with positive thinking. You're doing something far more sophisticated. You're becoming the person who has already received. There's a profound difference between asking for money and being someone who has already received it. When you ask, you're operating from the frequency of lack, reinforcing your position as someone who doesn't have what they want. But when you persist in the assumption that you've already received, when you keep returning to that feeling of completion and fulfillment, you begin to inhabit an entirely different identity. This identity shift happens gradually, almost imperceptibly, through the accumulation of these gentle returns to abundance. Each time you notice your mind drifting toward worry and guide it back to wealth, each time you catch yourself in scarcity thinking and choose abundance instead, you're not just changing your thoughts, you're literally becoming a different person. Now, I want to explore what this looks like when you wake up the next morning, how this new identity begins to influence every decision you make and every way you move through your day. Write in the comments, "I persist in abundance," if you're ready to make this gentle practice your new way of being. When you finally drift off to sleep tonight, you won't be going to bed as someone who's waiting for their financial breakthrough to arrive someday. You won't be falling asleep as someone who's hoping and wishing and crossing their fingers that maybe, possibly, if they're lucky, money might come their way. That version of you, the one who waits, who hopes, who lives in the energy of maybe someday, that's not who you are anymore. Tonight, you fall asleep as someone who has already received. You drift into sleep carrying the satisfied feeling of completion, the peaceful energy of someone whose financial desires have been fulfilled. This isn't pretending or playing make-believe. This is stepping into the identity that was always meant to be yours, the version of yourself that exists beyond the temporary circumstances that have been surrounding you. When something shifts inside you, while listening to teachings like these, hitting like is really you acknowledging that shift for yourself. Plus, it helps videos focused on genuine transformation reach people truly ready for change. The profound truth that Florence Scovel Shinn discovered is that your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between what you've experienced in your external reality and what you've experienced in your internal reality. When you fall asleep, feeling genuinely grateful for money you've received, feeling relieved about your financial security, feeling peaceful about your abundant future, your subconscious accepts this as your actual lived experience. And here's where the real magic happens behind the scenes. Once your subconscious mind accepts this new reality as truth, it begins to work tirelessly to bring your external world into alignment with this internal knowing. Your nervous system starts broadcasting a completely different frequency. Your energy field shifts. Your decision-making process changes. Even the way you walk and breathe and speak begins to reflect this new identity. You don't need to understand the mechanics of how this transformation works. You don't need to figure out the specific pathways through which money will flow to you or the exact opportunities that will open up. Your job is simply to hold the signal consistently, to maintain the frequency of someone who has already received, to keep returning to that feeling of completion and fulfillment whenever your mind tries to drift back into old patterns of lack. The external world begins to shift in response to your internal shift, but often in ways that are so subtle at first that your logical mind might miss them entirely. A conversation happens that plants a seed for a future opportunity. Someone mentions your name in a context that could lead to new income. An idea crosses your mind that feels inspired rather than desperate. The universe starts rearranging itself around your new identity, preparing pathways for abundance that you couldn't have orchestrated through effort alone. What you'll notice first is how different you feel when you wake up. There's a quality to your energy that's shifted, a sense of knowing that's settled into your bones, a quiet confidence that wasn't there before. Now, I want to reveal what day 2 brings, because this is where most people either solidify their transformation or unconsciously sabotage it, depending on how they handle the crucial test that inevitably comes. Write in the comments, "I am someone who has already received," if you can feel this new identity taking root within you. The crucial test that inevitably comes is day 2, and this is where your transformation either deepens into something unshakable or gets pulled back into the old patterns that have kept you stuck. You wake up after that powerful night of falling asleep as someone who has already received, and immediately your mind wants to do what it's always done. Scan for evidence, check for proof, look for external validation that something has actually changed. This is the moment when most people unconsciously sabotage their own breakthrough. They rush to check their bank account, hoping to see some miraculous deposit. They refresh their email obsessively, looking for that unexpected opportunity. They start analyzing every conversation and interaction for signs that their financial situation is improving. But here's what Florence Scovel Shinn understood that most people miss. The very act of checking for evidence is actually reinforcing the old identity of someone who needs proof before they can believe. You're not that version of yourself anymore. You're becoming someone entirely new, someone who doesn't wait for external circumstances to validate their inner knowing. You're transforming into a person who leads with truth rather than fear, who operates from certainty rather than hope, who simply knows their worth isn't up for debate. This identity shift is subtle but profound. When you resist the urge to check your account balance with that familiar knot of anxiety in your stomach, when you choose not to scan your environment desperately for signs that abundance is coming, you're making a powerful declaration about who you are. You're saying, I don't need the world to prove anything to me because I already know the truth. The old version of you would have been checking and rechecking, analyzing and strategizing, trying to figure out how and when and through what mechanism your abundance would arrive. But the new version of you moves differently through the world. There's a quiet confidence in your step, a sense of knowing that doesn't require external validation, a peace that comes from operating from internal truth rather than external circumstances. This is where the real work of day 2 lies, not in doing more manifestation techniques or trying harder to attract money, but in simply holding the frequency of someone who has already received, even when nothing in your environment has visibly changed yet. Every choice you make throughout this day matters. When you pay for your coffee, you do it like someone who gives without fear. When you open your mailbox, you expect good news, not because you're trying to manifest it, but because that's simply who you are now. Now, I want to explore the specific mindset shifts that make this new identity stick, because there's a particular way of thinking that either anchors this transformation or allows it to slip away. Write in the comments, I lead with truth, if you're ready to stop checking for proof and start being the proof. The specific mindset shifts that anchor. This transformation all center around one simple yet profound question. How would the wealthy version of me act today? Not the version who's hoping to become wealthy, not the version who's working toward wealth, but the version who has already received, who already knows their financial security is handled, who already lives from that quiet certainty that abundance is their natural state. This isn't about pretending or putting on an act. This is about tuning in to the frequency of someone who doesn't chase money because they already have it, who doesn't grip or grasp because they know more is always flowing to them, who moves through the world with the relaxed confidence that comes from knowing they're supported. When you can access this energy, even for moments throughout your day, you begin to make decisions that are completely aligned with abundance rather than rooted in scarcity. The transformation happens through these small, consistent choices that most people never think to pay attention to. When you buy lunch today, notice the energy behind your transaction. Are you spending from a place of fear, calculating whether you can afford it, worried about how much money you're parting with? Or are you giving from a place of abundance, feeling generous and grateful for your ability to support yourself and others? The wealthy version of you pays for things with ease, without internal commentary about lack or limitation. When you check your email, notice what you're expecting to find. Are you bracing yourself for bad news, preparing for disappointment, scanning for evidence that your financial struggles continue? Or are you opening your inbox with that subtle anticipation that comes from knowing good things flow to you naturally? The wealthy version of you expects good news, not because they're trying to manifest it, but because abundance seeking them out feels normal and natural. These micro decisions create the foundation for your new identity. Every time you choose alignment over anxiety, every time you make a decision from abundance rather than scarcity, you're literally building new neural pathways that support your transformation. Behind the scenes, your nervous system is learning to default to wealth consciousness instead of survival mode. What makes this particularly powerful is that you're not waiting for your external circumstances to change before you start embodying this new way of being. You're not postponing this identity until you see more money in your account. You're living it now, training yourself to occupy this frequency regardless of what your current reality looks like. Now, I want to reveal the specific challenge that emerges on day 2 and the hidden opportunity it presents, because this is where most people either break through to a new level or get pulled back into old patterns. Write in the comments, "I choose alignment over anxiety," if you're ready to make every decision from abundance today. The specific challenge that emerges on day 2 reveals a hidden opportunity that Florence Scovel-Shinn understood completely, though it goes against everything our achievement-oriented culture teaches us about transformation. The challenge is that your old patterns will try to reassert themselves, not through dramatic moments of doubt, but through tiny, almost imperceptible habits that pull you back toward scarcity thinking. You might find yourself unconsciously calculating expenses while you're shopping, or feeling that familiar tightness in your chest when a bill arrives, or catching your mind wandering into worst-case financial scenarios. The hidden opportunity lies in recognizing that transformation doesn't happen through intense, dramatic efforts to override these patterns. It happens through consistency in the small moments, through the gentle, loving choice to return to abundance more often than you return to fear. Florence Scovel-Shinn emphasized that it's not the intensity of your manifestation practice that creates lasting change. It's the consistency of small choices that gradually reshape your identity. The pause before you fall into the old habit of worry. The moment when you catch yourself about to check your bank balance from anxiety and choose peace instead. The split second when you decide to feel wealthy before the numbers in your account change. These seemingly insignificant moments are what make you magnetic to abundance. Your only job today is staying loyal to the version of yourself who already has what you're seeking, not through gritted teeth or forced positivity, but from a place of love for this new version of you that's emerging. Every time you notice yourself drifting back toward old patterns of thinking about money, you don't fight it or judge it. You simply, gently, lovingly return to the feeling of someone who is already supported, already abundant, already receiving. This loyalty isn't about perfection. You're not trying to maintain a flawless vibration all day long or never have another worried thought about money. You're simply choosing abundance over fear more often than not, tipping the scales of your attention toward wealth consciousness rather than lack consciousness. Behind the scenes, this gentle consistency is rewiring decades of conditioning, creating new neural pathways that support your transformation. What makes this particularly powerful is that each time you return to the wealthy identity, you're not doing it from effort or strain, but from love. Love for the person you're becoming. Love for the abundance that's your birthright. Love for the version of yourself that no longer needs to struggle with money. Now, I want to explore what happens when doubt inevitably creeps in during this process, because how you handle these moments of uncertainty determines whether your transformation becomes permanent or temporary. Write in the comments, "I choose abundance from love," if you're ready to stay loyal to your wealthy identity through gentle consistency. When doubt inevitably creeps in during this process, and it absolutely will, the way you handle these moments of uncertainty becomes the turning point that determines whether your transformation takes root permanently or fades back into old patterns. The doubt might arrive as a whisper questioning whether this could really work for you, or as a flood of practical concerns about bills and responsibilities, or as that familiar voice suggesting, "You're just fooling yourself with wishful thinking." The crucial insight that Florence Scovel-Shinn understood is that doubt isn't evidence that you're doing something wrong or that the process isn't working. Doubt is simply the old programming making one last attempt to maintain its familiar territory in your consciousness. When these moments arise, you don't need to panic, spiral into analysis, or start over from the beginning. You simply pause, take a breath, and gently reset your inner compass back toward abundance. This gentle reset is profoundly different from fighting doubt or trying to convince yourself out of it. You're not becoming someone entirely new through this process. You're remembering someone real who already exists beneath all the layers of worry and conditioning. The wealthy, abundant version of yourself isn't a fantasy you're trying to create. It's your authentic nature that's been temporarily obscured by circumstances and old stories. Every single time you breathe into this wealthy identity, every moment you return to the feeling of someone who is already supported and abundant, you're deepening what neuroscientists call the groove of neural pathway activation. You're literally carving new channels in your brain that make abundance thinking easier and more automatic. Behind the scenes, your nervous system is learning to default to wealth consciousness instead of scarcity mode. The transformation happens through this gentle repetition, this loving return to truth again and again. You stop being someone who occasionally visits the state of abundance when you remember to think positive thoughts, and you start becoming someone who lives there as their natural home base. The wealthy identity stops feeling like something you're putting on and starts feeling like something you're coming home to. What's remarkable about this process is how each return to abundance builds upon the last one, creating momentum that makes the next return easier and more natural. You're not just changing your thoughts, you're restructuring the very foundation of how you relate to money, success, and your own worthiness. Now, I want to reveal what Day 3 brings to this journey, because this is when most people face the ultimate test that either solidifies their transformation forever or pulls them back into old patterns. Write in the comments, "I return to abundance," if you're ready to make this gentle reset your new automatic response to doubt. Day 3 brings the ultimate test that either solidifies your transformation forever or pulls you back into the familiar patterns that have kept you stuck. This is when you'll be walking like someone who's already been paid, speaking like someone who's already been chosen, making decisions like someone who's already supported by abundant resources. Yet when you look around at your external circumstances, nothing visible seems to have changed. This is the moment when your old conditioning will launch its most sophisticated attack, whispering seductively that maybe you were just kidding yourself, that maybe this manifestation stuff doesn't really work, that maybe you should go back to the realistic approach of worrying and strategizing and trying to control outcomes through effort alone. The old version of yourself makes one final desperate attempt to reclaim your attention, using doubt and fear as its primary weapons. But here's what separates those who break through from those who get pulled back into struggle. On Day 3, when nothing seems to be happening externally, you smile not because you see proof of your abundance, but because you no longer need proof to know who you are. You've moved beyond requiring external validation to maintain your inner knowing. The wealthy version of yourself doesn't check the mirror to confirm their worth. They simply know it. This is the hidden truth that Florence Scovel-Shinn discovered about lasting transformation. The ultimate test isn't whether money shows up quickly, it's whether you can maintain your new identity even when appearances suggest nothing has changed. Behind the scenes, everything is shifting to accommodate your new frequency, but the three-dimensional world often takes time to catch up with the shifts happening in consciousness. Day 3 reveals whether you've truly stepped into the identity of someone who already has what they seek, or whether you are still secretly waiting for external circumstances to prove your worth. When you can maintain the feeling of abundance without needing your bank account to validate it, when you can breathe as someone supported without requiring immediate evidence, when you can move through your day with quiet certainty, even when everything looks the same, that's when you know the transformation has taken root. The journey reaches a crucial turning point here, because this is where most people either anchor their new reality permanently or unconsciously sabotage their progress by returning to old patterns of needing proof before believing. Now, I want to explore exactly what's happening behind the scenes during this apparent delay, because understanding this hidden process is what allows you to maintain your certainty even when logic suggests you should give up. Write in the comments, "I no longer need proof," if you're ready to pass this ultimate test of transformation. Exactly what's happening behind the scenes during this apparent delay is that the voice whispering, "Maybe it didn't work," isn't your truth speaking. It's simply residue, the final flicker of the old version of yourself who needed external evidence before they could trust their own inner knowing. That version of you who required proof before belief, who waited for permission before claiming their abundance, who looked to circumstances to determine their worth, that's not who you are anymore. You've evolved beyond that limited identity. Now you respond from alignment rather than reacting to appearances. When doubt arises, you recognize it as the death rattle of old programming rather than evidence that you should abandon your transformation. The wealthy version of you doesn't get thrown off course by temporary appearances because they understand something profound about how manifestation actually works in the physical world. This is where Florence Scovel Shinn's most misunderstood teaching comes alive in your actual experience. She said to never judge by appearances, to persist in the assumption that your desire is already fulfilled, especially when it's most challenging to do so. Most people interpret this as positive thinking or denial of reality, but it's actually much more sophisticated than that. What she understood is that the physical world is always the last dimension to catch up with shifts in consciousness. The real work is happening in invisible realms, in your nervous system, in your energy field, in the quantum field of infinite possibilities that surrounds you. Your consistent return to the feeling of abundance has been sending out signals that are rearranging reality behind the scenes, preparing pathways for money to flow to you in ways your logical mind couldn't orchestrate. Sometimes what appears to be delay is actually divine timing, creating space for opportunities that are far better than what you originally imagined. Sometimes the apparent stillness is actually recalibration, ensuring that when abundance does manifest, it arrives in a form that matches your new identity rather than your old patterns of receiving and losing. The transformation requires you to trust the invisible process even when the visible world hasn't caught up yet. This is what separates temporary manifestation from permanent identity shift. Your willingness to maintain your new frequency regardless of what appearances suggest about the timeline. Now, I want to reveal what happens when you successfully navigate this test of appearances, because there's a profound shift that occurs once you prove to yourself that you no longer need external validation to know who you are. Write in the comments, "I trust the invisible process," if you're ready to persist in your assumption, regardless of what appears to be happening around you. What happens when you successfully navigate this test of appearances is a profound shift in your entire relationship with reality itself. You begin to lead from the inside, regardless of what the outside looks like, and this changes everything about how you move through the world. When you check your bank account now, you do it like someone who already knows more is coming, not like someone desperately hoping for change. If the numbers haven't shifted yet, you smile because you know it's still done. The manifestation is still unfolding. The universe is still rearranging itself around your new identity. This is when you discover the hidden truth that Florence Scovel Shinn spent her life teaching. Sometimes what appears to be delay isn't punishment or evidence that you're doing something wrong. It's actually preparation, recalibration, and space being made for something far better than what you originally imagined. Behind the scenes, the universe is orchestrating circumstances, aligning opportunities, and removing obstacles to create the perfect pathway for abundance to flow into your life. The delay becomes a gift when you understand its true purpose. Maybe you needed these 3 days to fully step into the identity of someone who receives money easily. Maybe certain limiting beliefs needed to be dissolved before you could handle larger amounts of abundance. Maybe opportunities needed to be arranged that wouldn't have been available if money had shown up immediately through more obvious channels. Your willingness to trust the timing while maintaining your inner certainty proves to yourself and to the universe that you've truly transformed. You're no longer someone who needs instant gratification to maintain their faith. You're not someone who gives up on their dreams the moment results don't appear according to their preferred timeline. You've become someone who understands that true manifestation works in divine timing, not human urgency. This shift in your relationship with timing creates a profound impact on every area of your life, not just your finances. You begin to trust the process of transformation itself, knowing that everything unfolds exactly when it's meant to, in exactly the way that serves your highest good. Your nervous system learns to relax into the flow of life, rather than constantly bracing against uncertainty. Now, I want to explore what this looks like for those who need a fourth day of stabilization, because for some people, the most profound transformation happens when they learn to hold their new identity without any external pressure or timeline. Write in the comments, "I trust divine timing," if you're ready to let the universe handle the how and when, while you maintain the knowing that it's already done. For some people, the most profound transformation happens when they discover they need a fourth day of quiet stabilization. And if you're one of these people, this isn't evidence that you're behind or that the process isn't working. This is actually a sign that your nervous system is taking the time it needs to fully integrate this new identity at the deepest levels. Day 4 isn't about trying harder, pushing more, or adding extra manifestation techniques to speed up the process. It's about letting the foundation stabilize through stillness and continued loyalty to the wealthy version of yourself. What happens on day 4 is beautifully subtle yet profoundly powerful. You wake up and there's something different in your inner weather, a quality of certainty that's settled into your bones that wasn't quite there before. You're not hoping anymore, not wishing or wanting or trying to attract abundance. You're simply holding the frequency of someone who already has it. And this holding feels effortless, natural, like breathing. This is anchoring rather than waiting. There's a crucial difference between these two states that most people never recognize. When you're waiting, you're still positioned as someone outside of your desire, looking toward it with longing, checking for signs that it's approaching. But when you're anchoring, you've moved inside the reality of having already received, and you're simply allowing that reality to stabilize and become your new normal. The transformation that occurs during this quiet stabilization is happening beneath the surface of consciousness, in the invisible realms where real change takes root. Your subconscious mind is completing the integration process. Your nervous system is learning to default to abundance rather than scarcity, and your energy field is solidifying around this new identity. Behind the scenes, the universe is making final adjustments to bring your external reality into perfect alignment with your internal shift. Something remarkable happens to your relationship with time during this anchoring phase. The frantic urgency that used to drive your manifestation efforts dissolves completely. You no longer find yourself asking, "When will it happen?" because the question itself becomes irrelevant. When you truly know something is already yours, timing becomes a matter of divine orchestration rather than human impatience. This is when Florence Scovel Shinn's teachings about assumption becoming fact reach their full flowering in your lived experience. The assumption that you are abundant is no longer something you're trying to maintain against evidence to the contrary. It has become your natural state of being. Now I want to reveal what happens when this anchoring process is complete, because there's a moment of recognition that changes everything about how you perceive your relationship with money and abundance. Write in the comments, "I am anchoring in abundance," if you can feel this deep stabilization happening within you right now. What happens when this anchoring process is complete is a moment of recognition that fundamentally transforms your entire relationship with abundance forever. You realize that Florence Scovel Shinn's most powerful teaching has become your lived reality. Claim yourself to be that which you desire to be, and that you shall be. But now you understand the profound difference between claiming and hoping, between declaring and wishing, between being and pretending. You're no longer someone who's trying to convince themselves they're wealthy while secretly knowing they're not. You're not faking it till you make it or putting on a performance for the universe. You have genuinely become someone who lives from the truth of their own abundance, and this claiming feels as natural as breathing. It's not something you have to remember to do or work to. Maintain. It's simply who you are now. The transformation becomes complete when you discover that receiving is actually a frequency rather than an action. True receiving isn't about checking your mailbox every hour with nervous anticipation, or refreshing your banking app with tension in your chest, or constantly monitoring your environment for signs that money is coming. That kind of watching and waiting actually broadcasts the frequency of someone who doesn't have what they want, someone who's still operating from lack consciousness. Real receiving is a quality of softness, a state of relaxed trust that settles into your nervous system once you truly understand that the signal has been sent and your identity has stabilized. You know with quiet certainty that the rest is being handled by forces far more intelligent and organized than your conscious mind could ever be. There's a profound peace that comes with this recognition. You no longer feel compelled to manage or manipulate, or control the process. This frequency of receiving transforms how you move through every moment of your day. When bills arrive, you bless them rather than brace against them. When opportunities present themselves, you expect them rather than feel surprised by them. When money flows to you, you receive it gracefully rather than with shock or disbelief, because abundance has become your new normal rather than an exception to your usual experience. Behind the scenes, this shift in frequency creates a magnetic field around you that naturally attracts more of what matches your inner state. You're no longer pushing or pulling or trying to make things happen. You're simply being someone to whom good things flow naturally. Now, I want to explore the most subtle yet powerful aspect of this entire transformation, because there's a way of relating to money that completely transcends the traditional manifestation approach. Write in the comments, "I receive from softness," if you can feel this frequency of trust and relaxation settling into your being. The most subtle yet powerful aspect of this entire transformation lies in how you begin to relate to money itself. And this shift transcends everything the traditional manifestation world teaches about attracting abundance. When you stop treating wealth like a stranger that you're desperately trying to convince to notice you, and start treating it like a friend that you naturally expect to see, everything changes about how money flows into your experience. Think about how you behave around strangers versus friends. With strangers, you're often guarded, uncertain, trying to prove yourself worthy of their attention. You watch for signs of approval, analyze their responses, wonder if you're saying or doing the right things. But with friends, you're relaxed, natural, confident in your connection. You expect them to show up. You smile when you see them. You make room for them in your life without question. This is the hidden transformation that happens when you truly embody the frequency of abundance. You begin to expect money, smile at opportunities, and naturally make room for wealth to expand in your life. The relationship becomes easy, familiar, comfortable, rather than desperate and strained. Behind the scenes, this shift in how you relate to abundance creates space for it to flow more freely than when you were grasping and watching and trying to control every aspect of the process. The biggest shifts happen not in dramatic moments of manifestation practice, but in quiet decisions and invisible commitments that no one else ever sees. The way you breathe when you pay for coffee, the energy behind how you tip your server, the internal feeling you carry when you think about your financial future. These subtle, private moments set the tone and temperature for everything that follows. When you're truly receiving from this new frequency, you discover that wealth doesn't define you anymore. You define the wealth. You're no longer at the mercy of your bank balance or dependent on external circumstances to determine your sense of worth and security. You've moved beyond need into knowing, beyond hoping into being, beyond trying to attract abundance to simply carrying the frequency that makes abundance inevitable. You become someone who sets the energetic temperature of every financial interaction rather than someone who reacts to whatever temperature already exists. This is a profound shift in power, dynamics that most people never recognize. You're no longer being influenced by money, you're influencing it. Now, I want to reveal the final secret that makes this transformation permanent rather than temporary. Because there's one crucial element that determines whether this new relationship with abundance becomes your lasting reality. Write in the comments, I set the frequency if you're ready to become someone who influences abundance rather than being influenced by circumstances. The final secret that makes this transformation permanent rather than temporary lies in understanding Florence Scovel Shinn's most profound instruction, which wasn't about hustling harder or doing more manifestation techniques. Her final guidance was elegantly simple. Persist in the feeling of the wish fulfilled until that assumption hardens into unshakable fact. But the hidden truth about persistence is that it's not about gripping or forcing or maintaining perfect focus every moment of every day. Real persistence is about holding this feeling lightly but loyally, the way you might hold a butterfly, with enough care to keep it safe, but not so tightly that you crush its delicate wings. You let the feeling of abundance become normal and familiar, requiring no external validation to maintain its presence in your consciousness. Behind the scenes, this gentle consistency is what allows the assumption to gradually solidify from a hopeful thought into an unquestionable reality. What most people don't realize is that true wealth has nothing to do with the numbers in your bank account or the things you can afford to buy. True wealth is that deep, quiet truth that settles into your nervous system and whispers, I already have it, regardless of what's happening in your external circumstances. When you can access this feeling consistently, when it becomes your default state rather than something you have to work to remember, the numbers and opportunities naturally begin to catch up with your inner reality. This is the ultimate transformation, moving from someone who's trying to get wealthy to someone who lives from wealth as their natural state. You're not reaching for abundance anymore because you've realized you never needed to reach for something that was already yours. The journey you've been on, all the seeking and striving and learning, has brought you full circle to this simple recognition. You already are that which you seek. The impact of this realization extends far beyond money into every area of your life. Your relationships improve because you're no longer operating from need. Your health flourishes because your nervous system isn't constantly stressed about survival. Your creativity expands because you're not using all your mental energy to worry about resources. Everything becomes easier when you're living from this foundation of inner abundance. When you live from I already have it consistently, something remarkable happens. You stop being someone who occasionally manifests money and start being someone who naturally attracts abundance, because that's simply who you are. What this looks like in practice for those who have made this complete transformation is a way of being that makes abundance feel as natural as breathing. You wake up each morning not wondering if money will come, but simply knowing that you're supported. You make decisions from this place of inner security, and those decisions naturally lead to opportunities that someone operating from scarcity would never even notice. You've become someone who lives from the frequency of I already have it, and this changes everything about how the world responds to you. People sense something different in your energy, a calm confidence that doesn't need to prove itself, a quiet certainty that draws abundance like a magnet. Money flows to you not because you're trying to attract it, but because you've become someone to whom abundance naturally belongs. If you've stayed with me through this entire journey, something tells me you're ready to make this transformation real in your own life. The fact that you're here, that you've absorbed these insights about Florence Scovel-Shinn's teachings, that you've felt the truth of what it means to already be that which you seek, this isn't coincidence. This is recognition. For those of you who want to continue deepening this work, who are ready to explore more of these life-changing principles, I'd love to have you subscribe to this channel. The content here is designed specifically for people like you who are serious about transformation, who want practical wisdom that actually works rather than surface-level motivation that fades by morning. If this message resonated with something deep inside you, if you felt that shift happening as we talked about stepping into your wealthy identity, go ahead and leave a comment that simply says, "This message was meant for me," not for anyone else to see, but as a way of claiming this truth for yourself. And if this conversation created that sense of connection where you felt truly understood, where you recognized yourself in these teachings, a like on this video helps this message reach others who are ready for this same transformation. There's a video right here that goes even deeper into the specific techniques Florence Scovel-Shinn used to help people transform their relationship with money permanently. Click and continue with me over there, because the journey we've started together is just beginning.